2 hours before the world's most powerful military was set to destroy every bridge and power plant in an entire country, a deal was struck. But here's what nobody's telling you. The ceasefire isn't a ceasefire. Bombs are still falling, missiles are still flying, and one of the most strategically important waterways on the planet, the Strait of Hormuz, through which 20% of the world's oil passes, is only technically back open. We are 40 days into the US-Israeli war on Iran, and tonight, we're going to show you exactly how close the world came to a catastrophic escalation, and why it's not over. Stay with me, because in the next 15 minutes, this story gets a lot more complicated. Welcome back. If you're new here, this channel covers world news without the spin, just the facts, the context, and what it actually means for the rest of us. Today we have 3 massive stories. First, the US-Iran ceasefire. What's in the deal? Who brokered it? And why Iran says America is already breaking it. Second, Israel is not bound by the ceasefire. And last night, it launched one of the deadliest single attacks of this entire war. Over 250 people killed in Lebanon in 10 minutes. And third, North Korea just tested ballistic missiles with cluster bomb warheads. And almost no one is talking about it. Hit subscribe if you want daily coverage like this. We go deeper than the headlines. And let's get into it. Let's rewind 48 hours. On Tuesday, April 7th, President Trump issued what can only be described as one of the most extreme ultimatums in modern diplomatic history. Speaking publicly, he said that if Iran did not fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz by 8 p.m. Washington time, the United States would destroy every bridge in Iran, every power plant. Iran's military called the threats delusional. The Iranian government said the U.S. was showing disgrace and humiliation in the region. But behind the scenes, something was happening. Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif was quietly working both sides. And with less than 2 hours to spare before Trump's deadline, a deal was announced. Trump posted on social media calling it a double-sided ceasefire. Iran's supreme leader ordered all military units to stand down, but added ominously, "This is not the end of the war." So what exactly is in this deal? Iran agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz for 2 weeks. In exchange, the U.S. agreed to pause strikes on Iranian territory. Pakistan has invited both delegations to Islamabad on Friday for further negotiations. Oil markets responded instantly. Brent crude dropped nearly 19%, its biggest single-day fall since April 2020. But here's where it gets complicated. Within hours of the announcement, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi held a press conference. He said that Lebanon, where Iran-backed Hezbollah has been under sustained Israeli bombardment, was included in the ceasefire. He told Washington it had to choose, a ceasefire or continued war through Israel. You cannot, he said, have both. The United States said nothing about Lebanon. Israel's Prime Minister Netanyahu's office released a statement saying, "The 2-week ceasefire does not include Lebanon." One deal, 3 different interpretations, and the bombs didn't stop. I want to pause here because what I'm about to show you in the next segment is arguably the most significant military event of this entire war, and it happened while the world was celebrating a ceasefire. Israel launched what analysts are calling a 10-minute blitz on Lebanon. Over 100 airstrike targets, more than 250 people confirmed dead. That's next, right after this. While diplomatic champagne was still metaphorically being poured over the ceasefire announcement, Israeli jets were already in the air over Beirut. The Israeli military said it struck over 100 command centers and military sites belonging to Hezbollah across Lebanon. In one neighborhood of Beirut, Talat al-Khayyat, first responders pulled bodies from the rubble. At least 6 people confirmed dead in that strike alone. Rescue teams said others remained missing. In the southern suburb of Bir Hassan, workers were still clearing debris on Thursday morning. French President Emmanuel Macron, one of the few Western leaders to openly criticize Israel during this conflict, condemned what he called indiscriminate strikes. He personally called Lebanon's president and prime minister to express France's, quote, full solidarity. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, fresh from a meeting with Trump, told reporters that the president was clearly disappointed with European allies for not supporting the war effort to the extent he wanted. Rutte said he understood the frustration, but pointed out that European nations had provided logistics, overflights, and basing support. Now, here's the geopolitical fault line that this exposes. The ceasefire, brokered by Pakistan, was framed as a US-Iran deal. But Iran's entire regional strategy runs through its proxies: Hezbollah in Lebanon, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen. If Israel continues to destroy those networks while the US and Iran pause, Iran gets the worst of both worlds: a weakened proxy network with no ability to retaliate. That's why Iran's foreign minister drew such a hard line. And that's why, despite the ceasefire, this conflict is nowhere near over. One more thing on Lebanon. And this matters. There's an American journalist who was kidnapped in Baghdad 9 days ago. Shelley Kittleson. She has just been released by Kataib Hezbollah, but only after agreeing to leave Iraq immediately. That's the kind of pressure that exists beneath the surface of these negotiations. While every eye in the world was fixed on the Middle East, North Korea conducted what may be its most significant weapons test of the decade. Pyongyang confirmed this week that it tested multiple new weapon systems, including ballistic missiles equipped with cluster bomb warheads. Let that sink in. Cluster munitions are weapons that scatter dozens of smaller submunitions over a wide area. They are banned by over 100 countries under international treaty. Fitting them onto a ballistic missile, a weapon already capable of reaching South Korea, Japan, and US military bases across the Pacific, represents a significant escalation in capability. North Korean state media said the tests were part of an effort to expand nuclear-capable forces. The timing here is not accidental. While the US military is deeply engaged in the Middle East, aircraft carriers repositioned, strike packages launched, logistics stretched, North Korea is accelerating its weapons program. This is the geopolitical equivalent of robbing a bank while the police are busy on the other side of town. South Korean officials expressed alarm. A TV screen showing footage of the launch was broadcast from Seoul railway station. Ordinary commuters watching extraordinary news as they waited for their trains. Here's the bigger picture. The US is simultaneously managing an active war in the Middle East, a fragile ceasefire that Iran says is already being violated, a NATO alliance that's fracturing over support levels, and now a North Korean government conducting cluster warhead ballistic missile tests. The question military analysts are already asking, and this is the one that should keep you up at night, is whether North Korea's Kim Jong-un sees this as a window, a moment when America's strategic attention is split, and the consequences of provocation are lower than they've ever been. We don't have an answer to that, but the question itself tells you everything. Let's zoom out. What we are witnessing right now is not just a regional conflict in the Middle East, it is a fundamental stress test of the post-Cold War international order. The US-Iran ceasefire, fragile as it is, matters because the Strait of Hormuz is the jugular of the global economy. 20% of the world's oil flows through that 21-mile-wide passage. When it closes, oil spikes. When oil spikes, inflation returns. When inflation returns, central banks are forced to keep rates high. And when rates stay high, the already shaky global economy takes another hit. That's why markets moved 19% on a single social media post. That's how interconnected this is. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council, the body theoretically designed to manage exactly this kind of crisis, is paralyzed. China and Russia vetoed a resolution this week calling for coordinated efforts to ensure safe navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. They said it was biased against Iran. So the world's primary conflict resolution body is once again deadlocked along the same Cold War fault lines. And in the background, Bangladesh is fighting a measles outbreak. At least 130 children dead in 6 weeks. The Mediterranean Sea has already claimed nearly 1,000 migrant lives in 2026, one of the deadliest starts to a year since 2014. These stories don't get the airtime they deserve because the Middle East is consuming everything. This is the world right now: multiple crises, limited bandwidth, and a ceasefire that everyone is interpreting differently. Before we get to the outro, I want to ask you something directly. Of everything we covered today, the ceasefire, Lebanon, North Korea, what concerns you most? Drop it in the comments. I read every single one, and your responses genuinely shape what we cover next. If this video gave you context that you couldn't get elsewhere, that's exactly what this channel is built for. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, because tomorrow we're going to be covering the Islamabad peace talks between the US and Iran, and whether they have any realistic chance of holding. And if you want to support independent news coverage, sharing this video costs you nothing and means everything. Hit the like button. It tells YouTube this story matters. Tomorrow, April 10th, delegations from the United States and Iran are set to meet in Islamabad, Pakistan. Iran's foreign minister has already said that America cannot have a ceasefire with Iran, while Israel continues to bomb Lebanon. The US has said nothing about Lebanon being included, and Israel has flatly refused to stop. So here's the open question I'm leaving you with. Is the Islamabad meeting a genuine path to peace? Or is it a 48-hour delay before everything breaks down again?